The death of Popcorn Sutton of Moonshiners still affects many to this day in the misty valleys of Appalachia, where stories echo through hollers and the scent of pine hangs heavy in the air. The name Popcorn Sutton still carries a mythic weight. To many, he wasn't just a moonshiner, he was the last of his kind. A living relic of an era when making whiskey was more than a trade. It was a way of life. And though he passed away in 2009, the death of Marvin Popcorn Sutton continues to ripple through the hills and the hearts of those who knew him, watched him, or simply admired the legend from afar. Born in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, in 1946, Popcorn Sutton was Appalachian to the bone. He was short, wiry, bearded, and fiercely independent. He wore overalls like armor, smoked like a chimney, and spoke with a thick mountain drawl that seemed to come straight out of a bygone century. But what truly defined him wasn't his look or even his defiance. It was his unwavering dedication to the craft of moonshining. He didn't just make whiskey. He made it the old way, from scratch, with copper stills, wooden barrels, and secret mash recipes handed down through generations. In a time when most people had left the woods for cities and factories, Popcorn stayed behind, tending his stills deep in the forest and dodging law enforcement like a fox in the brush. His fame grew slowly at first. He published an autobiography in 1999 titled Me and My Liquor, which he sold from the trunk of his car. The book, filled with misspelled words, offbeat humor, and detailed instructions for distilling illegal alcohol, became a cult classic. Soon, documentaries followed, capturing his larger-than-life personality and rebellious spirit. He became a folk hero, a symbol of Appalachian resistance to the modern world. But with notoriety came consequences. In 2007, federal agents raided his property and found over 850 gallons of moonshine, along with stills and ingredients. It wasn't the first time Popcorn had been caught, but it was the biggest bust of his career. Facing 18 months in federal prison, the 62-year-old moonshiner made a fateful decision. Rather than live behind bars, stripped of his freedom, his mountains, and his stills, Popcorn chose to take his own life. On March 16, 2009, just days before he was scheduled to report to prison, Popcorn Sutton was found dead in his green Ford Fairmont behind his home in Parrottsville, Tennessee. Carbon monoxide poisoning. His death wasn't just the end of a man. It felt like the end of an era. To this day, his passing leaves a hole in the hearts of many. Family, friends, fans, and fellow moonshiners still speak his name with a mixture of reverence and sorrow. His widow, Pam Sutton, once said that her husband couldn't bear the thought of being caged. He couldn't go to prison, she told reporters. He couldn't live that way. Popcorn had lived wild and free, beholden to no man, and in death, he remained true to that code. A folk hero in the digital age. What's remarkable is how his legend only grew after his death. In 2011, the Discovery Channel launched the hit reality series Moonshiners, a show that capitalized on the romantic image of backwoods distillers living off the grid. Though Popcorn never appeared on the show, he died 2 years before it aired. His spirit haunted every episode. Tim Smith, one of the show's stars, had been a friend and admirer of Popcorn's. He often credited Sutton as an inspiration for his own journey from illegal distiller to licensed whiskey entrepreneur. In many ways, Popcorn's death provided the spark that reignited mainstream interest in Appalachian moonshining culture. Yet even as Moonshiners gained millions of viewers, some fans felt the show lacked the authenticity and raw grit that Popcorn had embodied. He wasn't made for television. He was real, uncensored, unpolished, and often unpredictable. His death, ironically, preserved that authenticity. He didn't sell out. He didn't compromise. He stayed true to the end. A cultural touchstone, Popcorn Sutton's legacy goes beyond bootlegging. He's become a cultural touchstone, a symbol of resistance to conformity, industrialization, and federal control. For many Appalachian folks, he represents the soul of the mountains, a reminder that tradition matters and that not every law is just. The moonshine he made wasn't just alcohol. It was heritage, rebellion, and survival in a jar. In communities where jobs were scarce and trust in the government ran thin, moonshine was a way to make a living on your own terms. Popcorn understood that. He lived it. His story has inspired books, songs, murals, and even a legal whiskey brand. In 2010, a businessman named Hank Williams Jr., yes, the country music legend, helped launch Popcorn Sutton's Tennessee White Whiskey, produced legally and with the blessing of his widow. Though some fans debated whether Popcorn would have approved of his name being turned into a commercial product, the whiskey sold well. Being a legend, but legends come with a cost. Popcorn's fame, especially in his final years, was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brought him recognition and a kind of immortality. On the other, it put a target on his back. Some believe that the federal government wanted to make an example of him. After all, he wasn't just breaking the law, he was teaching others how to do it, and proudly. That pressure, combined with his age and declining health, may have contributed to his decision to end his life. In that sense, his death is also a cautionary tale about fame, freedom, and the toll of living outside the law. For all his humor and bravado, there was a sadness to Popcorn, a loneliness that came from being one of the last of his kind. He didn't just lose his freedom when he was sentenced. He lost his purpose. Remembering Popcorn today, fans from all over make pilgrimages to his grave in Mount Sterling, North Carolina. His tombstone reads, "Popcorn said F*** you." A final middle finger to authority, etched in stone. But those who loved him remember more than just the outlaw. They remember the man who could spin a story, fix a still with baling wire, and make the best Dan white lightning east of the Mississippi. They remember the quiet moments too, how he'd sit on his porch with a mason jar in hand, watching the sun set over the mountains he called home. In a world increasingly driven by technology, regulation, and sanitized media, Popcorn Sutton remains a symbol of defiant individuality. He reminds us that there's still magic in the old ways, still value in handcraft and heritage, still dignity in doing things your own way, even if the law says otherwise. And that, perhaps, is why his death still affects so many to this day. Because Popcorn Sutton wasn't just a moonshiner. He was a rebel, a craftsman, a storyteller, and a legend. And like all great legends, he left us too soon, but not before lighting a fire that still burns in the hearts of those who believe that freedom is always worth fighting for, even if it comes in a jar marked in the misty hollows of Mahi Valley, North Carolina, where the fog wraps around the mountains like a homespun quilt. The legacy of a moonshiner still lingers like the sweet sting of white lightning. Marvin Popcorn Sutton, a name spoken with reverence and mischief in equal parts, wasn't just a man. He was a legend born of smoke, fire, and the stubborn independence of Appalachian roots. Though it's been more than a decade since he died, Popcorn's ghost still haunts the hills, the stills, and the souls of those who keep his spirit alive. Popcorn Sutton wasn't a mythic figure conjured by cable television, though the Discovery Channel's hit series Moonshiners helped etch his image in the American consciousness. Long before he appeared on screen, before the world outside Appalachia knew his name, Popcorn was a mountain man with a crooked hat and a fire in his belly, both metaphorically and literally. He was as much a craftsman as an outlaw, and his moonshine wasn't just a product. It was a symbol of resistance against regulation, industrialization, and the slow death of Appalachian culture. Born in 1946 to a long line of moonshiners and proud Scots-Irish stock, Popcorn inherited not just the stills but the soul of the mountains. He earned his nickname after a memorable bar fight involving a broken popcorn machine. The name stuck, and so did the legend. For Sutton, moonshining wasn't about money or notoriety. It was about heritage. "This is a way of life, not a business," he once said in his gravel and grit voice, captured in his self-published book Me and My Liquor and an underground VHS documentary of the same name. He saw the copper still not as a machine, but as a sacred relic, its coils and pipes an alchemy of survival, tradition, and rebellion. The time the world met him through moonshiners, Popcorn was already more ghost than man. Weathered, wiry, and wrapped in denim, he was a relic of a vanishing era. He spoke with a drawl so thick you could bottle it, and he walked like someone who'd danced with hardship too long to care about appearances. His long white beard, piercing eyes, and ever-present hat made him instantly recognizable. But behind the grin and the sass was a man who knew the government was closing in. Popcorn's death on March 16, 2009, wasn't just the loss of a man. It was the silencing of a voice for a culture fighting extinction. Facing an 18-month federal prison sentence for illegally distilling spirits and possession of a firearm as a felon, Sutton chose death over incarceration. He rigged his old Ford Fairmont with carbon monoxide, parked it behind his house in Parrotsville, Tennessee, and drifted into the stillness that he flirted with all his life. To many, it was a tragedy. To others, it was poetry. A man who spent his life outrunning the law refused to be caged by it. He lived free and he died free, people said. His widow, Pam Sutton, said he told her.